Grant Cardone's advice recently changed my music career. And in this video, we're gonna unpack what that advice was and how I believe this mindset shift can help you elevate your life and career goals. So I'm sure many of you watching this video are already familiar with who Grant Cardone is, but if you're not, Grant Cardone's an entrepreneur, real estate investor, and social media guy. Honestly, he can be a little controversial and a little divisive. Some people love him and eat up every single thing he says. Some people hate him, think he's a con artist, a scam. And personally, I think that's part of what makes him so brilliant, is that he's super consistent in his messaging. He's loud, he's bold, he's unashamed. And like I said, he has some people that love him for that, and they will follow him into the grave. They're gonna eat up every single thing he says. And then he has haters. And honestly, he strikes me as the kind of guy that is perfectly okay with having haters, and he just sticks to his message. If you are familiar with Grant Cardone though, you're probably familiar with his 10x concept, as this is something that he preaches all the time. There's actually a little bit more to it than I first thought there was on the surface when I first heard Grant explain the 10x concept, so let me explain that for you briefly. In short, what Grant says is if you have a goal, you should actually 10x the goal to essentially reach the original goal you set out for. Let me explain that for you in more of a practical example. So let's say you wanted to make $1 million. Well, what Grant says is instead of setting your goal to make $1 million, you should instead set your goal to make $10 million. Now, why he says that isn't because he necessarily thinks your goal, if it's only to make $1 million, should instead be to make $10 million and you're a failure if you don't reach $10 million. No, that's actually not what the thought behind the 10x thing is whatsoever. What Grant actually explains really well with the 10x thing is that if you set your goals way bigger, if you start thinking about the action steps you have to take to make $10 million, your mind just starts thinking in a way bigger place than it would be to make $1 million. The decisions you're gonna make, the people you're gonna work with, the opportunities you're gonna say yes and no to are gonna be a lot different for the $10 million thing than they're gonna be for the $1 million thing. And there's a level of seriousness that comes with chasing the $10 million goal as opposed to the $1 million goal. This concept can apply itself really well to the music industry. Let's say you have a goal as an artist to have 100,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. Well, you know, it's not that it's not going to be work to reach that 100,000 monthly listeners, but what if instead I told you you had to go get 1 million monthly listeners in the same time frame you were trying to get 100,000 monthly listeners? I bet the decisions you would start making and the way that you would start thinking would become bigger. And what Grant goes on to explain is, let's say you only reach half of your 10x goal. Let's say you want 1 million monthly listeners or the $10 million. Well, if instead you only make $5 million or only reach 500,000 monthly listeners in the streaming example, you've actually 5x your original goal. So part of it is just the mindset shift of even if you come up short of the result you're hoping to hit with the 10x thing, you've actually maybe 3, 4, 5, 6x what you're originally trying to do. But really, I think the biggest thing around this is that intensity, the mindset shift of just thinking way bigger and then implementing the action steps to start thinking bigger. So let me give you an example of how I recently applied this to my music career and some of the action steps that followed with the application. So I have a project called Outskirts. You can go check us out. We're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, Apple Music, all the things. And honestly, Outskirts started as the ultimate side project. It has since grown into more of a band, and part of this 10x conversation is just getting more serious with it actually being a band. But we started, myself and collaborator in the project, Brandon Ray, we started just writing some songs for TV and film. And we did a variety of songs, but the songs that all had this cohesive kind of thing, this hype, swagger, rock, cinematic, boom clap, sports, workout, whatever. All those things we just started labeling as Outskirts. We'll call it Outskirts for our teams to pitch it for TV and film placements. Well, we started getting a few placements, and again, we weren't trying to be a band at all at this point. This is 3 or 4 years ago now, but we started getting some placements, and the first thing we got was this NFL thing, and we thought, well, like the song that we wrote is going to be on TV. We should make a profile on Spotify, make a YouTube channel, and upload the stuff just in case anyone comes across the music. Well, one thing led to another, and we got a few more TV placements, and the original song we put out to streaming actually got a lot more streams than we maybe thought it would. I actually talked about some of the initial strategies we did to get that first batch of streams in another video called How to Grow Your Spotify Monthly Listeners. Go check that out down in the description below. That's a side note though, but we started just seeing this compounding effect. We got more TV placements. We got more actual fans. But again, we're not trying to treat this as a band at all at this point. It's a side thing. And then one of our songs got picked up by Dude Perfect, which really increased our YouTube views. But again, we weren't trying to be YouTubers whatsoever. And then that same song called Let's Do This one day, like we wake up and it's going crazy on social media. It's used in people's Instagram reels and TikToks like crazy. And we're like, what in the world's happening? But again, this is all just incrementally happening over the course of a year or 2 years. Like we still weren't trying to be a band. As crazy as it sounds, I know, talking to the camera, like this was a side thing. This was just a batch of songs we wrote for TV and film, and sure, they found some homes. But basically one thing led to another, and one day we woke up and we have like a decent little YouTube following and people DMing us saying, you're our favorite band. I listen to your music all the time, or I work out to your music every single day, or we're seeing these songs in people's Instagram reels and their TikToks and seeing our stuff on TV. And then one day we wake up and it's like there's a decent little streaming following on Spotify and Apple Music. So over the course of these few years of these things just incrementally happening and starting to build on themselves, Brandon and I somewhat recently knew, you know what, like we have a little thing here. And as a producer and songwriter that works a decent amount with other artists too, like I've seen some artists with labels and bigger budgets putting a lot of effort, their full attention behind it, not even have some of the success that we had on this side project. So we knew, okay, like we need to get serious with this. And this is where the 10X mindset shift really kicked in and really directly impacted and affected the actions that we've started taking. You see, Brandon and I were talking casually, like maybe it would be good to release a song here and there, you know, release a song every couple months, or maybe we could do this, maybe we could try that. But then I really started thinking about this 10X thing, not to necessarily 10X our listeners or our revenue or our streams, anything like that, but just this concept that I first explained of thinking way bigger and then thinking about the action steps I would take if I was trying to reach a way bigger goal than, let's say, doubling or just casually growing our streams and our listenership. So somewhat recently, Brandon, the other half of Outskirts, and I had this conversation, and he didn't really know what was happening, but I sat down with him and I said, Brandon, I have a question for you. I am Outskirts Music. You are a consultant to Outskirts Music. I am writing you a check to be our consultant, and you have one job. You have to tell us over the next year how to 10X our revenue, how to 10X our listenership, and how to 10X our streams. What are the things you're going to tell us to do in order to make that happen? And right there in that moment, it was this wake up call for both of us. And Brandon was like, oh my gosh. He's like, I've never thought of it like that. Like up until now, it's been so casual, so passive, like we're not even a band. But instantly in this conversation, we got serious. Like, well, here's exactly what we would do. And the goals became crystal clear. It's not just going to be casually releasing music this much. It's actually going to be releasing way more music than we intended to put out. It's not just going to be we might post on social media over here occasionally. It's here's this social media plan that we're going to lay out and we're going to stick to, and we're committed to sticking to it. It's not just, hey, one day we might go make merch and blah, 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 blah. It was no, like we're going to get the ball rolling on merch designs ASAP. So you see the intensity that started coming with it. And again, it's not necessarily that our goal is to 10X our revenue, 10X our streams. It would be amazing if it happened, but it's to start implementing the actions to become successful. One thing that's so true about the music industry in particular is that we can't control results. We can only control our actions. Like, I have no control if I go release a song today, if that song's a hit, or if people are going to choose to stream it, if they're going to sync it in TV and film, if they're going to add it to their playlist. I can't control any of that. I can only control my actions that I implement on a day in and day out basis. And I believe that this concept can apply to you directly in whatever your music goals are, whatever your career goals are. If you have something you're aspiring to, the thing with 10X isn't to get fixated on the results. It's to become the people who do the actions consistently over time to then yield the results of 10X. And by becoming the person who has that 10X result and doing the actions that yield that 10X result. I can't sit here. I'm not a fortune teller. I don't know the future. I can't tell you you will for sure yield a 10X result. You might yield a 20X result. You might yield a 2X result. I can't tell you what the results are, but we're not focused on that. But I guarantee you, if you become the person who does the thing to yield the result, you'll see the ball start to move forward and you'll see the needle tick in your favor. So I hope this video in discussing Grant Cardone's advice in 10xing your goals and 10xing your music career is helpful for you. Again, the goal with all of this isn't necessarily to get focused on the results, but it's to get your mind thinking bigger and for you to start becoming the person who does the actions consistently over time. If this video was helpful, would you hit that like button, drop me a comment down below, and subscribe to the channel for more content just like this. Thanks so much as always for watching, and we'll see you again real soon.